had the Joshua live Friday, and I delayed my trip to Palm Springs just to do the call. And I wasn't going to ask a question, by the way. But I always say if nobody asks a question in the first 5 seconds, I just ask a question, because it usually sparks something, right? So I usually give 5 or 10 seconds when someone says, when Joshua says, anybody want to ask a question? And it's silence. And then I'm like, I give it a few seconds, then I unmute myself and I ask something. So I was not prepared, nor did I think about asking Joshua a question. And I know you and I have been talking a lot over text and over Zoom about, how do we align ourselves with our authentic self, our true self, and our truest desires? And how does manifestation play into that, right? How do your desires, your wants, your needs, superficial or not, like whatever they are, how do they play into your authentic self, your true self, and what your what your inner self wants? And I think you talk about like just coming up on the spot, and I asked that on the spot, asked that question of, hey, what is that? How do you know if you intellectually understand that everything is perfect and you're a magnificent human being and everything is in love and you don't need to struggle and effort to be happy? How do you go from intellectually understanding that to actually being that? And you and I have been talking about that for a couple of weeks, right? Back and forth, just playing around with that concept. So his response, Joshua's response, and thank you for sending me the transcript.
Yeah.
Was, and I've been reading and going over it, and I mean, you can kind of see I've got all these little notes on it and everything. Right. And his response on Friday when I heard it, I was actually disappointed.
You were disappointed when you heard it live?
When I heard it live, I was disappointed, and
right.
I was kind of wanting. It's like when you go to church, and the priest puts his hand like on your head and said, "You're absolved," right? And you're like, "Oh, say 5 Hail Marys, and you're a good
and you are
Catholic."
Sweet. Yeah.
Right. You're now allowed back into heaven, right? And I think that Joshua has actually done some of that stuff with Jen and with Jackie, right? I mean, some amazing conversations with them and some enlightenment. And I was kind of hoping that it would be that simple. And you had given me the transcript, and then that weekend, then I drove 4 hours to California, to Palm Springs with my kid and 80 other parents to watch 40 kids play lacrosse Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then drove 4 hours back late Sunday night after all the games. And it really wasn't until Monday that I started to I actually pushed it all on my mind and started to read through your transcript. And there were a few things in there that was, he's telling you you're on this journey, that you have to go through all of these things. You have to go through ups and downs. And I don't know if ups and downs are the right words. You have to go through the struggles, through the acknowledging of the limiting beliefs, through seeing your life in a limited way before you can explain to somebody else what it is like to live that way. So, how many times have we all heard, or somebody said, yeah, but you don't get it. You've never done that, right? You haven't experienced it. It's that old adage, right? Oh, Rob, you don't know that. You've never lost $1 million. I have, right? Nobody can say those things. Oh, Rob, you never drove. Oh, sorry, my dog is going a little crazy.
That's okay. We're all pretty excited about this. The dog's excited too. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think my landscaper just came by. I just screamed his name. Hopefully he'll calm down. So, and I think for me, it was just like, oh, I'm just tired of going through all of these events. And I'm like, I'm processing them. I don't know. I'm done. Have I owed money? Have I done this? Have I lost jobs? Have I lost companies? I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm done with it. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't care. And I wanted someone to come in and just put my hand on my head and say, you're absolved. You've put the effort in. Thank you. Now go and be happy. And
but it's not quite that easy, is it? Which is the inherent challenge. For people listening and watching this at a later date, should we just put a frame around this so people know what we're talking about?
You do such a good job with that. Thank you, Rob. Such a good job.
I think there is a new episode in Joshua Live now, which is number 355, which could be your episode. Is it? Do you know?
It is.
It is, right.
Okay,
I see that's live now. It's just gone live today.
Twice, or let's do it twice today.
Okay. Is the sound quality good?
It's perfect.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Good. Yeah.
Really
it must have been my internet that was bad as for the gaps in the recording. So, yeah, okay. I'll go through and fix that transcript. But anyway, so at the beginning of that Joshua Live, there was an unusual pause because they did their normal 10-minute introduction. And then they said, and who would like to start? And then there was like silence, silence, silence. And I thought, shit, this is unusual. And then you dived in with this question of all questions. And in fact, you had two questions, really, another one after about 10 minutes. And the material that came out of that was enormously rich and very interesting because there's a number of things that Joshua said there, including that the answer to this question is going to be useful to many, many people for a very long time to come, which I can see is true. And they also made some comment about you being an old soul. And it's kind of along the lines of, well, if you deal with your limiting beliefs and do a few other things this time around, that you may not choose to come back and do any more of this because you've kind of got to the apex and it's all skiing downhill from there. So that was very interesting as well. And another thing is that Joshua's been far more direct and personal with a number of people, such as Jackie and Jen and Jordan and you now recently.
And it was Jackie's question too. And Rob, talk about that because Jen followed up with a question. You mentioned Apex. Yeah. And Joshua goes into a phenomenal 10-minute.
Yeah. They talked about the people getting to the apex, right? The apex basically of their, I don't know what language to use, but of their journey or their series of incarnations. And yeah, so anyway, you posed a question around desires and all triggered by a massive manifestation event that's happening in your life, and which seems to be a core and repeating thing. And the part of it is around this idea that in order to have the life you truly want and to manifest the things that you need for that and to let them flow in, we kind of have to dump our previous persona. And I'm not sure that you and I have quite done all of that. I think that we're probably both still attached to who we were when we were making millions.
No, there's no question. And I think, to be honest, this goes back to that, how we started. It's only because you've had so much experience in that realm that it allows you to go, you could talk from this level or all the way down to this level because of those experiences, which makes you probably one of the most well-rounded people when having the manifestation events I'm having. There probably isn't another person on the planet that I could talk to besides in this group, in the Joshua group, besides yourself, because you have such a personal connection and experience with all of that stuff. And I don't feel like that in talking to anybody else, people go, high class problem to have, you don't care. And it's if it's a bad haircut, it's still stress, right? Stress is stress. A limiting belief is a limiting belief. But because you've had such a vast variety of experiences, you get it all on every level. You can talk to anybody from a personal experience, on a personal level, from all the way from here, all the way to the gamut. And there's so few people that can do that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you do. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, same back to you. The good thing about a bad haircut is that you and I can celebrate the fact that we've got hair to cut, whereas how many of our buddies don't?
Very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said. So you were framing it, and I like the way you were framing it. So Joshua always, after his 10-minute intro, asks everybody to ask a question. And it's funny, it really was this awkward, 10 seconds. And usually people are fighting to ask a question.
I know. And occasionally there is a lag, but it's very rare. But I don't think I ever heard a gap like that one.
Right.
Yeah.
And and it's so funny that I literally turned my chair like sideways when I'm listening, and I'm looking this way, and I actually, I think I even turned my camera off because I like to just close my eyes and listen to them, because it's the answers are so. And then when nobody was talking, I was like, oh, and you can hear I'm stuttering. I'm not even quite sure what to ask, right? But it's like that interesting situation. It was just that was flowing. Whatever I listened to the audio a couple times today, I'm stuttering. I'm not even asking it's all over each other. So that was truly just an inspired moment.
Yeah.
Trying to ask that question.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the way you delivered it, you know, everyone was with you because everyone could kind of feel the process you were going through, trying to articulate your question.
Yeah,
and the magnitude of it too.
So where I kind of felt disappointed was he didn't solve my problems. He didn't solve my problem. He didn't go, oh, he didn't tell me my future. That's it right there. He didn't say, oh, next week you're not gonna have any more problems.
Well, no, not yeah, that's right. I do understand, because, you know, like you and I both had a Catholic upbringing, and, you know, and I stopped going to church when I was about 18 or something. My mother didn't talk to me for a week, which she denies to this day. But anyway, but we get on better than ever now. But that feeling of like you went and told the priest your sins, and then, you know, I absolve you, whatever I can't remember even what they say now. And, you know, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and then they give you your penance, which is like, say, 5 Hail Marys or whatever it might be. And it's like, yeah, okay, you walk out there feeling cleansed. It's in a way, I mean, I'm not into that anymore, but it is quite a beautiful ritual, isn't it?
It's and I understand why it's been so successful, right, for so many years. And in Jewish religion, they do it once a year, right? Yom Kippur, you know, you're absolved of all you don't eat, you fast for 24 hours, and you're absolved of every sin possible. You don't even have to say anything. You just have to, you just don't eat for 24 hours. I'm simplifying, obviously. But it's true. All these religions, because it makes people feel good. There's a reason for it, right? To your point, that it's important that people want to know that they're appreciated and they're loved. Once again, that goes back to, I think, what Joshua was saying. It's not about, especially for me, it's not about trying to get that control, which is what I was looking for, right? I was looking for that.
Yeah, but you did get some answers, but they weren't the answers you wanted. So, for example, Joshua said you couldn't get here if you weren't a dynamic, powerful, limitless old soul who has come this time to change things up, to do it differently, to finally understand who you are, and then to live that life. Because that life is amazing, incredible, spectacular, and exhilarating, and it's also highly satisfying.
I got all the answers. There's no question. As I took the time, and once again, I can't thank you enough for sending me the transcript, because that allowed me really to look at it. And every morning, the last 3 or 4 mornings, I've read it, like I said, I mean, 3 or 4 times, and I'm starting to understand, you know, I needed to play this out. I needed to understand, you know, what I needed to understand what my limiting beliefs were. I you know, think about this, is I gave myself dyslexia. It's not a crippling disease.
All right. So that was really interesting, because I don't know if you may have told me, and if you had, I've forgotten that you had, you know, were dyslexic as a child, or now, or whatever, right? So let's say that's a thing, but because Joshua mentioned it as a for instance about dyslexia, and I listened to it, and I was talking to Trace afterwards. I said, I wonder if that was directed at Jerry, whether, you know, he had dyslexia as a child and then was wanting to make up for that for the rest of his days. You know, whether that was you, and it was. Wow.
That was me to a T, where he said, so think about this. So I can remember in middle school, I was reading on a 2nd grade level. My teachers were like, you're not smart. Nobody understood it. I was literally reading 2nd grade version of Jack and Jill when I was in 6th and 7th grade. And I was told constantly, you know, you know what, you may not make it, you know, it's okay. We'll get you through high school. But on the flip side, what I had given myself was athletic ability. I was anything with a ball I could play. And I was an outstanding athlete. So I was able to connect to every teacher through athletics, because all the teachers are coaches.
Right. Yeah.
So everybody is so funny. If you look at how I gave myself dyslexia, to say to you, to as the base for my foundation of what to build upon my limiting beliefs. And I built everything about on that base, everything. I'm not smart, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. Meanwhile, on the flip side, I got into college, I did everything I wanted to do, all for sports, but I still did everything everybody else did. I still graduated, still got everything else. I then, and Joshua pointed out, then you went to prove everybody wrong. He talks about that, right? And that's
Right.
exactly what I did. I took a job at $17,000 a year. I was the lowest paid kid out of all my friends. They were all making 24 and 25 at that point in time. My parents told me, you can't take a job for $17,000. She's like, well, you're lucky you have a job. Within 5 years later, I made my first million.
Wow.
I did everything humanly possible to prove everybody wrong. And I did it with anger and a vengeance. I did it
So
struggling and efforting on the highest possible level of struggling and efforting.
I found the thing where they mention that you might have the challenge of dyslexia as a child and have everyone telling that, oh, you're not good enough. You don't know how to do this. You should be more advanced than you are. You should be able to learn this stuff by now. You have a disability that's setting you back. Well, you can see that watching that trajectory towards everything you are now, which is proving others false, proving you can do it, validating yourself in the eyes of others, making others see you as worthy, controlling the conditions in such a way that people rely on you, people need you and are supported by you. So that I shouldn't laugh. That is just like the most extraordinary summary of where you are friggin' well at.
That's it. And it
That is
wasn't until
incredible.
and I didn't hear that, but I was able to, so here's something funny. So I'm dyslexic. I have a tough time reading. It's not severe dyslexia where I see everything switches around. I have ADD, attention deficit, and I have dyslexia. So it's very difficult for me to read, which is audible. But I didn't get it until I read what you sent me. I listened to the audio a couple of times, but when I read it,
Okay.
it was very, for me, it was very powerful. And I'm like, oh, I get this. I get this on every level. And mind you, in addition, he also talked about, going to teaching my daughter's sorority at the University of Arizona. By the way, on Monday, my daughter calls me and goes, listen, Dad, the whole sorority's getting together, 500 kids. On February 7th, you've been invited to come talk.
Wow.
And I'm like, and I didn't, she's been
Wow.
asking me and I've been saying, but I've been delaying it. Like
I
I
see.
didn't, and I've been like, what am I going to say? What I'm struggling with Joshua is how to simplify it into a Tony Robbins way. Like the one thing that you and I get on every level, right, is when it comes to people, we have to simplify it so they shouldn't have to work to get at what you're saying, right? If they have to uncover and get into what the message you're trying to give into, it's not going to get through to anybody, right?
No,
So I've
no,
been
you have
trying
to
to,
build on the foundation of what they know and what they believe, and you have to help them feel smart, not stupid.
right. So, and for the last, I don't know, 6 years, I've been doing obviously an intense deep dive in all of this, as you and I have talked about. And honestly, today, when I went, me, I love to go to the steam room. I go to the gym and I'll steam for literally a half hour. I meditate in there. And I had this huge download of this is what you're going to talk about. This is how it's going to work. And I'm like, oh my God, this makes sense. This all makes, like this morning, I didn't even want to I was getting up. I'm like, what am I going to talk about on February? I'm like, I don't want to bore these kids. I want to excite them. So it's so funny. So it's now Wednesday. This was a Friday call. In those 5 days, I've ignored the call for 2 days. Literally didn't even think about it. As you're on a soccer field, you're on a lacrosse field for 10 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday, then driving 4 hours back, just spending time. So funny. I said I ignored it, right? But all I did was really enjoy the present moment with my kid, right? And be there and just non-judgmental, was having a great time and really just loved being around people. I was enjoying everybody. I mean, talk about I ignored it. I did exactly what Joshua said to do, right? Do it in love and do it in appreciation. Don't do it in how to criticize, right? And I didn't criticize my daughter once. I mean, I was, you're a coach. You could be saying, hey, you got to run that play faster. You got to do this. I was just like, wow, I love the way you're out there. I love watching you out there. Love being there. Going into this to the Ascension Experience Part 8, having the Joshua live call, all of this together, and you see how they all fit together now. His weekly live calls, his daily emails, and his 4-week Ascension courses or the 8-week boot camp. It trains your mind to push outside circumstances aside and helps you formulate creative thoughts inside. It helps you connect to your inside thoughts. So for me, the call on Friday, hearing some of that stuff, disappointed, got in the car, I was like, let's go, honey. My daughter, we drove the 4.5 hours after that call. I didn't even think about it. And I was just like, because in my mind, I wanted to control what he was saying. I wanted him to say, hey, the future for you is this. I wanted that. What was that? And what he did say, and it was like, oh my God, you've accumulated all these experiences. All right, you've had all these experiences. Okay, who are you going to share this with now? And how is this going to help you go out of victimhood into the creative side? You've now played the victim for 50 years. You've been the victim. How do you switch that and go and become the creator? That's what he was telling me. And he was saying, you're done. And the funny part is, the most beautiful part, Rob, he said this, and you'll appreciate this because you and I have talked about this so many times, where Tony Robbins says to me, says not just to me on virtual calls with 100 other people, right? He says all the time, I'm the personal consultant or personal, development coach for 50 of the wealthiest people on the planet, and 48 of them are depressed, right? And that is, he says this all the time. And that was it. And when Joshua said, pouring water into a cup that is already full, it's overflowing, it's all pouring out. We are all full. All of our cups are full. We think going out and getting more money or getting more of this or getting more things, right? Getting all those things are going to fill that, but it does. It doesn't go back into the cup, which is why we're so unfilled, so unfulfilled or unsatisfied. And we keep setting new goals, and we keep thinking these new goals are going to get us more satisfied. Meanwhile, our cup is full. Nothing's getting into it. Nothing. It's like taking vitamins and your body's just not absorbing it. You're not getting any of the benefits. We think we're going to get them because we're told by somebody who is successful and has his own plane, is worth billions, that, hey, if you do these things, you're going to be happy. Well, you're happy for achieving it, as we all would be, but it's still, the cup is still, it still didn't absorb any of it. But if you look at what I made notes of the top 50 most successful people Tony Robbins was working with. And then I went and I Googled what their top 10 things are for success. And you know what? Out of the 50 people, I put in an Excel spreadsheet. I'll send it to you. Do you know what the only common element was in all of 50 people? There was only one common item. Be happy and do what you love.
Right.
Nobody else. But nobody talks about that except Joshua.
No. Well, that's true. The do what you love part in particular, and to be happy, happiness and fun as objectives in and of themselves, with no further requirement, right? Like to do something purely because you enjoy it. It makes you feel good. It's fun. Like that is something that pretty much nobody's teaching apart from Joshua. So with the stuff that Joshua said, they said that the way that your dyslexia plays out in your life now, not in terms of reading, but in terms of relationships, is that you want to have people depending on you. They said something along those lines, didn't they?
Absolutely. He's dead on. I mean, and then that's when, even when I'd lost my company, and my wife, thank God, she's amazing, was taking care of everything, because she had to step up and take care of some of the stuff, which she did everything wholeheartedly. I felt, once again, that was the crushing limiting belief that I couldn't take care of my family, and that my wife was doing it all, and I had to get over it. And that's why that event happened for me, right? That event happened for me at that moment to show me that my wife still loved me, my kids still loved me, everybody still loved me. When I had $280 in my pocket and a $20,000 monthly nut to pay, and nobody stopped. The only person stopped loving me was me.
And did you move past that point, or have you gone back to what they said here, validating yourself in the eyes of others, making others see you as worthy, controlling the conditions in such a way that people rely on you. People need you, people are supported by you. So did you actually move past that point, or did you go back again?
I went right back again, which is why I'm having these new manifestation events. The ones
I knew the answer to that question. I just didn't want to be that blunt.
Oh my God. You just slapped.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That was so good, Rob. That
I'm not
was
famous
awesome.
for subtlety.
I love it. But that's exactly it. And you know what's funny is that my wife and I, our relationship is great. I love my wife very much. I love my kids. And we have a great relationship. And I as we go through all of this, I go through this, I no longer care this time. I'm like, whatever, it is what it is. So this time I'm not focused on it. I'm not angry. I'm not playing the victim. Like it is what it is. Instead of, I'm just super excited to go talk to my daughter's school right now. I am like jumping out of my skin to go talk to somebody and understand. I thought, I think you can appreciate this. Not that I'm right, but you can appreciate the thinking. I thought I needed to have 25 million in the bank for people to listen to me. I thought I had to say, yeah, I'm a multimillionaire 25 times over. This is how I did it. But that's not it. And that was my biggest limiting belief, that because of that, growing up with that dyslexia, and because my entire life, even when I made my first million, by the way, they didn't, in that office, there were guys that had, incredible degrees, all this kind of stuff. They were like, ah, you're lucky, Jerry. I did it again. And I had done it. Yeah, you're just lucky. We gave you that. So no matter what it was that I had done, I always believed I needed somebody else to give it to me.
Right.
That I wasn't creating it myself until now. Until now.
Right. So they also talk about the tipping point, right? Which is
I've been, you've heard me say that, right? I'm like, I feel like we're at a tipping point. I've used that phrase for the last 6 months. It keeps popping in my head. And then, and you and I have talked about it, but I didn't talk about it with Joshua, and he brought that up.
They said, yeah, this is the tipping point here. And they talked about, if you're really steadfastly holding man-made desires, which are always in your mind, they're talking about receiving inspiration, having a high perspective, and then the inspiration seems to contradict everything you want. And then they said somewhere, I'm not necessarily going to dig for it now, but they said somewhere about, so you're doing all this work, you're doing all these courses, and you're doing your daily homework, your daily spiritual practice, you're doing, you're meditating, and you're doing your manifestation event forms, to work out your limiting beliefs and all that stuff. And they said something like, but yet you're not feeling it. And so they're saying to you, well, that is another part of that cup that's full, and trying to fill it some more. And so it's always overflowing. It's like, okay, you're pouring water into that thing, it's already full. So what's the part that's missing? And it's not that we don't need to be doing all those things like the identifying limiting beliefs and so on and so forth, but it's just, well, you've been doing all of that and you didn't get what you expected or what you wanted. And another theme in there is using all of those tools to control conditions, which I think many of us do. Many of us in this, whole people listening to this stuff, the Joshua stuff, right? People who've done the boot camp and the Ascension experience. My sense is that they raise that point because many people are using those spiritual practices not to let things flow, but to actually try and change their conditions, to control conditions, rather than actually trusting. So it's a very tricky little subtle process, though, isn't it? That
big time.
Discover
I got it. It's on the first page, Rob. If you look at it on the first page, it's like that whole section you just talked about. It's like the second paragraph or third paragraph down below, where it talks. You couldn't have said that even better at more of a perfect time. And that to me was such, as I read it, right? It says here, you're validating yourself. Yeah. Validating yourself in the eyes of others, making others see you as worthy, controlling the conditions in such a way that the people have to rely on you. People must need you. They need to be supported by you. All right. And I'm efforting and I'm struggling to do something and to allow something and to help people love me rather than just being my authentic version of who I am, who is simply there to support others on their journey of the discovery. See, that was something that just clicked in my mind. See, Ray says here, and you are efforting and struggling to be something that allows others to love you. That's exactly what I was doing, rather than being my authentic version, an authentic version of myself, who is simply there to support others on their journey of self-discovery. Right.
So the thing is that the fear that comes up is like, you've got a beautiful house and beautiful cars, and you bought a car for your youngest daughter, because she can drive now, and you've got college, tuition fees and sports fees and sorority fees, and so you got all this people depending on you to make all this money to give them this life, and the fear that Joshua talked about as well. Do I become like the hermit in the desert, wearing a sackcloth and, give it all away? And, you tell your daughter, like, college tuition is now up to you. You can do it yourself. Sorry. And I mean, that's the extreme version, but it's like the fear is, well, if I stop pursuing all of these things, if I stop being that person who they depend on, because I'm providing all this money to do all this stuff, will it all fall apart? And could I stand what people would think of me, including my family, like my wider reputation? Everyone thinks I'm this, that, and the other. And I'm talking about both of us here, really, that it's like we continue to play into that persona. Like people, I've made a lot of money, as you know, and I believe, if I really want to do that again, I'm sure I can do that again. But it's less and less important, really, as the primary goal or the primary pursuit. Like I noticed with some of my businesses, like that one of our websites, the internationalcoachregistry.com, that instead of thinking now, when I put the packages together for coaches to help them promote their business, instead of thinking about how do I get them to pay me, I'm thinking now about what would be valuable to them that I know and that I can help them with. Like, I didn't deliberately change my perspective, but it has changed, and it's really now all about how can I help those people. But anyway, I digress a little. This is the thing that if you say, right, my primary role in life is actually, for example, to be a spiritual leader and teacher, I'm here to actually be who I authentically and truly am, and it's not that persona. And there may or may not be money involved in that other you. And so basically what they're saying is, this is what you're here for, this is what you want to do this time. You've set yourself a fairly difficult challenge in order to be able to do that. And you went through it once when you ran out of money and you didn't have anything and you couldn't do anything. But then again, you've rebuilt that dependency where people depend on you for all those things. And I hope you don't mind me talking about it this way, but
I love it. No, it's
a very, very difficult thing. It's like, to me, it's like, taking the big leap of faith. It's not quite jumping out of a plane without a parachute, but that's not a bad metaphor.
It is, and maybe that's what it is with me too. It's like, see, when you say that, Rob, and you're like, I hope, like, I have no emotional connection to any of my failures. Like when you talk about, my wife was paying for every bill. I literally went from, I have a letter which I saved. I saved the letter, which I had owed 80 grand in back rent, rears, or they were going to kick me out. I got an eviction notice with my kids, my whole, like, I would tell anybody, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't issues, but I rebuilt it all when I came here in Arizona, and I kept telling everybody, I'm here to be reborn, but I rebuilt it based upon what I knew. And what I knew was and I'm not disparaging Tony Robbins. I love the guy. He was inspiration beyond inspiration for me, but I was rebuilding it based upon the same, on the same foundation I had built upon my previous worthiness, right? I built it all. And it wasn't until Joshua, and now it's been, and it was probably a year before Joshua, which I started to understand what spirituality was, which was really connecting with my inner self and defining success for myself, my inner self, versus not letting success be defined by outside elements, right? And that's really that's the first step. right? Going, well, wait a minute, I really don't care what the outside says is successful anymore. I need to figure out how to be happy, right? And now we call that how to become aligned, how to have source flow through me. And that's really
Oh yeah,
what
so
the
that was
people want
another
to
big
know.
thing in that, and what
Yeah.
Joshua said to you was having source energy flow through you and having love flow through you. And it's like, well, and I guess, you know, in my own way, I'm moving more towards that. But I think I'm still somewhat attached to the persona of who I used to be or who people imagine that I am.
Well, think about this too. And I had heard this, I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years ago, that, you know, if you have 1,000 friends, there's 1,000 different versions of you out there. No two people look at you
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
And what helped me with that was when I went back home for my mom's funeral, I had taken my youngest daughter with me. My oldest daughter didn't, you know, she's still young. She was like, I really don't feel comfortable. I'm like, absolutely, you know. So I went back and I saw all my high school friends, and I hadn't seen in 30 years. Well, and we left on great terms, but I hadn't seen those guys, and they all had come out because my parents were still in the same house I grew up in. So all the people that were home, and they were telling my daughter stories. And my daughter was like, "That's not you, Dad. I can't believe that was you." And I started thinking that these guys still look at me as I was, because nothing had changed, right? So if this idea of who I am, and if I'm waiting for somebody else to acknowledge an aspect of me so that I can feel good about it, that's the definition of insanity. There's 1,000 different, that's literally 1,000 different versions of me out there, that if I talk to any one of those people, they're going to tell me something different about me. There was one of the Tony Robbins things I had done. They said, listen, right now, pick up your phone, text 10 friends right now. What is the number one element they love about you? Or what is the number one element they think is super special about you or
Wow.
unique about you, whatever it is. And I did it, right? There was actually Anthony Trucks, who has a podcast. He's an NFL guy that got washed out, right, of the NFL, has a crazy good story, right? And I did it. And I got 10 different answers. And one of the answers I got from somebody who I truly respect and who makes a few $1,000,000 a year. She's brilliant, a good family friend. The fact that you're always challenging yourself to learn something new and continuing to grow, you're always learning. And I'm like, so here's myself, who I think I'm or I didn't have any value in myself, didn't think I was smart, right? I was like, so here's the smartest person I know out of that group, making probably the most money. Says, because you're the smartest person I know. And every person that said something back to me related to who they were. And I was like, holy cow.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess you only see things that reflect who you are in others. Yeah.
And isn't that what Joshua says?
Yeah, they do. They say that the way people are towards you is a reflection of how you perceive yourself. Yeah.
Do that. Try that exercise. It was
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Well, that's a bit scary. I don't know if I want to do that.
See, and I saved them, and I'll share them. I'll find them and I'll share them, because to me, that's how you get to know yourself. And you know what? Joshua's been doing this in my inner self. When I first went to college, because I didn't, my grades weren't there, as I had said before, I was put in this remedial program that was going to help me get in there. And the first thing we did in one of the classes was everybody had to sit in a class. Now, mind you, I went to college about 2 weeks early for sports. So when I was a freshman and I was being initiated onto the team. So when I went into my first class, I literally had, the colors of the college were green and yellow. And they had shaved my head. One side had painted yellow. I couldn't get off. The other had painted green. And I had like a black eye because there was a mess, right? We were like, it was one of those things, right? This is back in the 80s. You were allowed to do those things, right? The kids, God, you know, thank God they can't do it now. But everybody had to write on a card what they thought of everybody in the class. So the teacher handed out cards with everybody's name on it and said, and you had to stand up in the class. And before they got to know you, just by looking at you, they had to write their thoughts on you.
Wow.
And at the end of the semester, she gave everybody and I still have those cards 30 years later. They gave everybody an envelope with your name on it and how everybody thought. And once
Wow.
again, everybody said mean, angry, tough, aggressive, right? Because that's how I
Yeah.
looked, right? But that was, you talk about, that was me. I mean, absolutely. And I'm like, and then what they had you do at the end, which is the best part, is on the back of the card, write who they thought you were then. And then at the back, it was,
Right.
wow, what a nice person, caring, helpful, and it's super interesting that
Yeah.
we take these personas, right? And all these different ways people think about us.
Yeah.
And we're trying to fight 1,000 different personas to get people to think about us a certain way, because we are trying to control that versus just look inward. So like, that's the thing that I got from that message with Joshua, was like, holy shit, stop struggling and efforting, getting those 1,000 people to appreciate you. Just appreciate yourself, and everybody will appreciate you.
So I've had interesting experience recently. I've been connecting with people I haven't spoken to for a very long time over the last 6 months or so. And there are two people that I hadn't had any contact with for over 40 years. And both of them last knew me when I was at university, long-haired university student with a beard, like I had hair down to here or something, and leather jacket, motorbike, patch jeans. And then so the fact that I got into finance, made a lot of money, and did all that stuff, and had that lifestyle for a while, they don't know anything about that at all. So all they know is who I was back then, when I was finishing university, and then who they see in front of them now, which, they don't really know anything about me. And that's kind of interesting, really, because in a way that's quite a good way to connect with your authentic self, because it's like all of those years of a different persona, they never knew that. So I don't have to untangle any of that at all. Anyway, but what I wanted to ask you, the question that's been sitting here is there anything that you're going to do differently from now, or are doing differently from that extraordinary answer to your question that Joshua gave you in that episode 355 or whatever it was? 350. I'll check that number.
Yeah, it's 355. You're 100% right. And
Yeah.
that's the, okay. So then let's take 2 steps back, because it's a great question. And let's look at this. I have been meditating for an hour and a half, right? It's funny, but this weekend, the Saturday and Sunday, you're up at 5:30. So I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to meditate in a hotel room with my daughter. It's just, I'm like, okay, you get up at 5 o'clock, shower, you got to go down. So I really didn't have, my schedule didn't really make it. Could I have done it? Yes. But I was like, okay, I'm just going to, and I gave into it and said, I'm not going to do anything this week. I'm just going to spend time with my kid. And on Monday, I downloaded your transcript, and I meditated on it for about an hour and a half. Same thing yesterday, same thing today. Today, I might've been 2 hours. And I was waiting, I was looking for, and Joshua says it in his response to me. He's like, you are looking for alignment. You're not looking for anything else. Everything you think you're looking for, you're not. You're only looking for alignment. Everything you want is in alignment, and you're looking for that. You keep disguising it as other things, but it's not. It's alignment, but you don't feel it. You just don't feel it yet. And so I spent the last 3 or 4 days, I'm looking for that. And then today, while I was meditating my second time, it came to me going, you got this gift with your daughter being, you are going to put together a phenomenal, you're going to record this, you're going to share with Rob and Jackie and Jen what your talk's going to be about, and you're going to make it, and you're going to have, and this is going to be fun. And you are going to, this is going to be an incredible experience. There is no financial, there's no remuneration, there's no outcome at all, except I hope that I inspire somebody to continue with just their journey of self-discovery.
So you are going to record this,
oh
you? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Get a video or whatever. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm going to write up the outline, send it to you, and I want your feedback on it, and say, and it was funny, but when I was in this last meditation, what came down was, if I look at the last 6 years, each year there was a different phase of my self-discovery, from just reading general books, listening to podcasts, doing all, I did 1 year, I did, I think 15 online challenges. right? I think in 2019 or 2020, I did all these different challenges, and every year was different. And 2021 for me was tied everything together. And what 2022 was, it unfolded. What it did for me today was it unfolded as, okay, you've now taken you've taken all of these experiences, you've taken all of this knowledge, you're on your journey here, start sharing it this way. And what I got, which was super interesting, was everybody's talking about goals, everybody's talking about more money, everybody's talking about success. What you're going to help people understand is it's just about happiness. It's just about finding love and happiness. And you could still make boatloads of money. You could still have all these great lives. You don't have to have one without the other. I think our society is leading people on to believe you can't be happy and financially successful. I think there's a connotation out there.
There is still that thing, and some of it comes from like the Bible, where there's that thing that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. Like those sorts of comments don't really help.
Yeah, and the meek shall
Abundance,
inherit, and the meek shall inherit the earth, right? But if you look at, so here's the other thing too.
One version of that, with the rise of people like Bill Gates, is that became the geek shall inherit the earth. But anyway,
yeah, that's very funny. But think about this too, and this is the other thing too that I've has come to me. Do you know how many times the Bible's been interpreted or rewritten? Like 500.
Yeah,
like 500, like officially. Like you could go back, like you can go get, like the church I think uses like the 1960 King James version. There's still new versions out there. And if you look at what certain words meant, 2,000 years ago versus what they mean. Now, meek meant, if you look back what the meaning of meek meant, it meant nonviolent.
Yeah.
It meant loving. The meek shall inherit. I don't even know what to say. I'm like, oh my God, when you go back and look at that, you're like, holy cow, but we've perverted that to say the meek are the weak, the poor. Like, no, that's not what it meant.
That's a very good point. I mean, I studied linguistics. Like, it was one of my major things I studied at uni many years ago. But one of the interesting things is the rapid way in which words change. Like, one of the most offensive words for most people in our language is the C word. But in Victorian times and pre that in Britain, for example, that was a common word. It was a normal everyday word. But now, it's just about the most offensive word you can actually use. And that fascinated me that, there was even a street named after that. It was a street where prostitutes worked. And it's the name of the street was C. Grope. So Grope. Lane.
Oh my God.
Lane.
That is
Grope Lane. And so that may
is it still named that? Is it still
the word was not obscene back? The word was not obscene back then, right? Anyway, I digress. But it always amused me. Linguistics was a lot of fun. Anyway, but that's very simply so about the meek, and that explains that. But I know a lot of people feel that it's not spiritual to have a lot of money, and it's not the money itself. It's how important it is to you, and how you perceive it. Is it about flowing in and flowing out? Is it energy, or is it a marker of status and success? And do you use it to control conditions? Like where we live here, it's a beautiful village by the sea, and it's most of the homes have now become holiday homes, and there's only like 700 permanent residents, so it's pretty quiet. And without international tourism with COVID, it's very quiet. And people come for their 2 weeks or whatever, because it's summer here right now. It's summer, Christmas, New Year is our summertime. So January, February, summer, and February, March are hot and beautiful weather. But so people tend to have the school holidays, businesses closed for a bit. So what you guys might do in July or whatever, I don't know when you have your big holidays, but we do that at Christmas time. And people come with their boats, their boats, with outboards on the back and their jet skis, and they come and they recreate on the water furiously for 2 weeks, and then they're gone. And it's like, how meaningful is that? Like, was that really fun? You spent, an hour in the morning preparing your boat, then you spent 2 hours cleaning everything afterwards. It's like, it's kind of fun. Like, you did a bit of fishing, a bit of water skiing and whatever. And, I can see, taking kids water skiing is a lot of fun for them. But I look at it and I think it actually seems kind of pointless. Like, what's the intrinsic value in any of that? Whereas I get up early and I walk down the hill as it's getting light. There's nobody around, everyone's asleep. And I can hear the birds singing and the sun's coming up, and it's like this magical time of day. And it's a very beautiful place. And there's a lot of fragrant plants, it's a bit like being in the tropics. Like, you walk down and you just hit with these waves of, beautiful fragrances from nature and the bird song. And it's like, that's a different way to experience it. And I'm not saying that's better or superior. I just look at all of that stuff and I think, would I buy a boat like that? It's like, nah, I just wouldn't. Like, looks like an awful lot of hassle for hardly any gain or benefit. Anyway, so all I'm saying is that for those people, that's their marker of success and status. Like, yeah, I've got this holiday house in this village and I've got a boat there and we do this for our summer holidays. And it's like, and is that the highlight of your year? And then you go back to, half of them go back to doing a job you don't like that much or you hate, and you imagine that you've rewarded yourself with those things to actually do a bunch of stuff you don't really want to be doing. Which brings me back to something I was thinking when you talked about doing this talk to the sorority with 500 people. It will be interesting to know whether that is the beginning of a whole new path in your life. In other words, talking to audiences about what you have learned.
And there might be 50 people there. Like, it's one of those things where they have the whole sorority's got to get together, and whoever stays, right, and whoever leaves. It's on a Monday night, right? So I'm curious, and for me, I do think it's the first step, because you talked about, am I doing something different? So my daughter's been asking me since December, Dad, and I share with her. So all the Joshua stuff I get, those weekly emails, the daily spiritual elements, and the daily spiritual work, and then the workbooks I send to my daughter as well. So she does those, right? So she loves this idea. She's actually taken the intention thing, which she actually evolved it to, was actually pretty interesting. So she said, what's my intention today? It's like to love. And she puts a box next to it, and she writes down all the things that she wants to do to that will express that intention. So she takes her intention for the day, she writes down 4 or 5 words, and she puts a box next to it and writes down the actions that are going to. And I'm like, that's great, honey. I'm like, I thought it was a beautiful sentiment, right? And
yeah,
and she's like, Dad, this is what I did today to do this for my intention. I'm like, that's awesome.
So Joshua has said that on that daily spiritual practice, the most valuable parts, if you do nothing else, are setting your intentions and appreciating things. And other than that, of course, meditation. But those are the key things. So setting intentions, which is often, it could be something as simple as, I'm going to have fun today, or feel good today, or make sure I enjoy everything I'm doing, or only do things I enjoy. So that's sort of general. I mean, they say set general intentions for the day, I think is the word they use. But it's very powerful. It's your general intentions for the day. Yeah, that's what it says.
Yes, general intentions for the day. Yep. So
it would be very interesting if you end up starting to give, like we're doing it already here, I suppose, because, in a slow kind of a way, we're processing these videos, and some of them are on YouTube now. And, we eventually might use the MP3 and put them on a podcast or something. But so I just want to tell you about something that I've been up to. Is like, we've got this website I mentioned before, which is for coaches to promote their business and for people to find coaches, life coaches, spiritual business coaches, whatever. And that's the internationalcoachregistry.com. But I had the inspiration recently to get a domain, and we're starting to make a website called, it's about law of attraction information. So it's called LOAinfo.com. So at this particular point, which is January 2022, I should say, the site's not live, but it will be soon. And that has really grabbed my interest and attention. And it's really reinvigorated my interest in the coach registry, and I redesigned all the offers and packages around that. And the one thing I did just the other day is I've made as a giveaway to people on that coach site, so it'll be on there soon, is a 5-day gratitude challenge. And so that's a free giveaway. And then I've also put together for coaches a thing like for a listing on the site, they pay whatever. And I'm going to put in there a course which I'll sell for $199, which is about building your personal brand. And it's about the importance of that, how you do it, how to be a thought leader, you know, if you want to be an influencer, it's all of that sort of stuff. But also it's because I know a lot about websites, and that now I can put in there as well, well, your website needs to do these things and this is how you do it. And your LinkedIn profile needs to be like this, and here's how you do that. So it's all about that sort of stuff. So I'm finding that really doesn't feel like work when I'm doing that. It feels like play, which is really good. So I can see that's my direction, because I've kind of gone from doing online marketing work for businesses that have products. The people we deal with are wonderful, but the products are of no interest to me, you know, like, and then the next transition was we started to deal with people like Gary and Jackie and so on, and Krista and Jessica, and helping them with their websites and their online presence and reaching more people and building a list and all that sort of stuff. And that is far, far more interesting than the other work. You know, the people are wonderful, but and the other work, but in this case, the work is interesting and the people are wonderful too. So, and like Tracy says, when she's putting up all Gary's stuff online, all of the Ascension Experience in the boot camp, that is by far the most interesting work, you know, she's done, you know, like it beats everything else. But anyway, so that's what's happening on that side. So I can see that we are enablers to help people like Jessica and so on, Jackie, reach more people, that we have the tools and technology with the online marketing stuff. So I can see there's a purpose that makes you feel good in that, and even more so is doing our own stuff, you know, with those two websites. But I just want to tell you something else interesting that happened is that I think I've told you before that one of the ways that my inner self or my guides and teachers, whatever, reach me with new ideas is things randomly appear on my phone, right? And the first time I remember happening in a big way was when I was at probably my lowest point ever. And this is probably about 7 or 8 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe 9. And I picked up my phone one morning, you know, wake up, pick up your phone, bad habit. And my Kindle was open, and I had not been looking at my Kindle. And it was open at a Wayne Dyer book, which I did have, Real Magic, which is a great book, which I hadn't looked at for a very, very long time. And it was open at a particular page, and I have no idea how this happened, but that page was exactly the message I needed at that time. And that really was kind of my bottom point, you know, the opposite of the apex, whatever that is. So that was my, you know, my bounce point off the bottom. And so basically new ideas come to me. I pick up my phone and there's a new idea. So for example, there was a thing on Reddit, a thread I don't follow, a subreddit, and it's about astral projection. And the top post, the post that Reddit presented to me, like this might be of interest to you from their algorithm, was about sleep paralysis. And I thought, sleep paralysis, is that thing that used to happen to me as a child, where I would wake up frozen and couldn't move, and it was terrifying. And I read the thing and I Googled it, and sure enough, that is sleep paralysis. Well, people are into astral projection, which is what I used to call astral travel, which fascinated me beyond belief, but I never really got into. They deliberately go into this form of sleep paralysis because then the mind and the body can be separated and they go off with their astral projections. And so I'm really fascinated by that wacko stuff. And it all came to me because Reddit not only showed me that thread of astral projection, whereas I'd never even thought about calling it that, I knew astral travel. And then they not only did that, but they put up a post where somebody was asking about sleep paralysis, right? And that was just completely random. So that's a whole new interest of things I want to explore. And like I've always periodically had flying dreams where I could sort of stand there and I'd feel this energy well up inside. Then I'd be flying off, you know, over around the place, all over the show. But I've never actually harnessed that in any way. So lucid dreaming, or, you know, conscious dreaming, and Jessica, with all of her training with Carlos Castaneda, is very knowledgeable about this stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to say that this interesting thing keeps happening. And another thing that happened was I belong to this thing called the Social Media Marketing Society, which I pay an annual subscription. It's a closed group, opens once a year. It's run by Social Media Examiner, who have really good podcasts. The guy, Michael Stelzner, who runs it, they're really high quality, give a lot of value there. If anybody listening wants social media marketing information for free, like, get into their stuff. It's really, really good. Anyway, they have regular sessions in the private group where they get an expert in, and they're about an hour and a half, normally an hour of talking, half-hour questions. And this woman was talking about TikTok. And, I'm thinking, oh, TikTok, that's for teenagers, and it's all those silly dancing and singing videos and lip syncing and like, what a load of crap. Anyway, so I thought, right, you might be an old so-and-so, but be open-minded, see what the younger people with the high vibration are doing. And I discovered that 20% of TikTok people using TikTok in the States are over 40. So, and another 20% are over 30. So in other words, 40% of people using TikTok are over 30, right? So, and I also discovered that it's a super powerful marketing channel. And at times it gets more internet traffic than Facebook or YouTube. And there was one day recently where TikTok had more internet traffic than Google, which is always number one. So it's like, oh, reframe your thinking here. And then I started searching for things I'm interested in, such as online marketing, coaching, spirituality, law of attraction. And there are all these with, people basically using the organic reach of it to promote their messages, as well as, using paid ads. So within a week of that thing popping up on my radar, suddenly my mind was like, oh, okay, time to stop having that closed-minded attitude about TikTok, embrace this new idea. And it's Joshua's right that when you are born, you and the earth, your vibration is a perfect match to the vibration of the earth. The vibration of the earth keeps rising. And so the younger people coming in are a match to that higher vibration. And sadly for you and me, the kids and their kids are much higher vibration than you and I will ever be. And all of our so-called wisdom is of little value to them, really. I'm not quite sure where we fit in. But anyway, so that was very interesting as well, because to me, it's like, you have to throw away your old person's viewpoint to understand TikTok, and then to see, like, people say, oh, short attention span, that's a terrible thing. 15-second videos, well, they're now 15 seconds, 30 or 3 minutes. And somebody said, well, I don't think it's about short attention spans for young people. I think younger people are just not prepared to put up with all the BS to get to the stuff they really want. And the 15-second or 30-second format forces you to really deliver a powerful message in a short period. And if you want to consume more, you can go to their other channels or whatever and can consume more from that person. And I thought, I actually believe that, because I like YouTube videos to work out how to do something. But if I look at it and it's a 7 or 10-minute video, I'm just too impatient. It's like, I think the stuff I want is like 30 seconds or 1 minute within that 7 minutes, but I can't be bothered watching the 7 minutes to get to the nugget, So, in other words, if you could do me a 30-second TikTok and tell me what I need to know, that would be far preferable. And that is not about attention span. It's actually, give me the real gold, the real oil. Anyway, so
I love it.
A little bit of what's been happening for me this week. And the move, I guess the reason I wanted to tell you that is because it's finding more authentic and meaningful work, and work that feels like play and not work.
It's great what you just said. Sort of, it almost answers the question you had asked. What are you going to do differently? And it is, I have my URL for my name. I'm going to do that. I was playing with the idea of the spiritual CEO. Somebody already has that title out there, but that concept of the chief spiritual officer, like, that to me is where I'm going to just start playing around with that, having those things, get my website up and going. I had, did my GoDaddy, my URL. I just never launched it. Get that settled. I've been using TikTok, that's where I've been recording my sunrises. And if you go, like, I think my TikTok's Jerry Kidd. I only got like 10 up there, but I record my sunsets in the morning, and I always put, like, it's almost like a Joshua saying, like, for the day, like, lead your day in love. And, it's something that I've had from Joshua. I'll put as the quote. But if you look at TikTok in terms of inspiration, if you use manifestation, do hashtag manifestation on TikTok, it's like, I don't know, 500,000 posts.
It's massive.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
The search engine is
significant.
really good.
Yeah,
The TikTok
really,
search
really,
engine is a joy to use.
it really is.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's so funny. So I had this call yesterday, this Zoom call, business Zoom call, and we were talking. We were raising a bunch of money. We're doing this launch, and literally, you couldn't have been. The advisors were like, we talked about going in this one direction. And I said, I'm a little hesitant to do this. I kind of feel like we need to just, button up our foundation, make sure we're doing this. So like, if you aren't struggling, if you aren't worried, if you aren't fighting, it's a fight every day to get. And I'm like, this is what and I'm like, okay, this is not what I want to do. And I'm on a Zoom call, and I'm like, okay, you're the one responsible. You're going to be held accountable for all this. And I'm like, yeah, this is not what I want to do. I'm just listening, going, if you couldn't line up more things for me to say, this part of my career is going here, and this part is coming here.
Yeah.
You couldn't line up more things about, I no longer, so I just had this conversation with, we had started this kids club, and we just gave it. I literally gave it to ASU to run. They want to run it, which is great. And they were worried about some stuff. And I'm like, listen, and I said, if you're going to make this a struggle and an effort, that's not going to work. Like, it's got to be easy. It's got to be fun.
Yeah.
And I find myself saying,
really, it's a little bit like, people who think you can't be spiritual and have a lot of money. It's a little bit like you can't be successful unless you work really hard. And just talking about being the spiritual CEO, something that you probably thought of and may or may not interest you is the idea of bringing spiritual practices into a workplace. And I met a guy over our summer vacation, and he's got maybe 60 staff or something. He's got, I think it's a concrete products business. It was New Year's Eve and we were drinking a bit, so my memory's a little bit hazy, but I remember the essence of it. And he looks like he's a real action sort of a guy, like he's, hyperactive all the time. And but it's a very competitive industry, and competitors are always poaching his staff. And so he's got into some, I don't know who this person is, but he's got into some kind of spiritual teacher. And so he has regular sessions with the spiritual teacher to try and bring a spiritual perspective to the guys who are manufacturing concrete products in his business. And so he is sharing all of that and has sessions with his spiritual guru and all of these guys making concrete products. And I don't think he's doing it specifically for staff retention, but it is having that effect. In other words, well, I can go and do this job in the factory here, or I can do it there. It's all the same. I might as well go to the guy that's paying me more. But now what he's saying is, well, I can give you a whole new layer of meaning as well. And so that was pretty interesting, that this guy could be 32 or 33 or something. And he's, you would never guess. Like, I talked to another young guy I know who knows this guy really well. They're always playing golf together. And Trace said, oh, so-and-so is running his business in a spiritual way. And his friend, who's the same age, who he plays golf with and they go drinking and all that, said, what do you mean? And this guy had no idea about that part of that guy's life. And I was like, really? So that was interesting too. But so anyway, it's a whole new thing. And as Joshua said, the young ones are coming, with a new vibration. And, there was the guy talking about TikTok, and he started doing the stuff when he was 19, this online stuff, and now he's 23. And he was the guest on the Michael Stelzner's Social Media Examiner podcast, right? And he's really authoritative and really smart guy. And he's like, holy smoke, 23, like, where was I when I was 23 compared to this? I know we want to compare, but this guy he's really a class act, a real class act. So Italian American, by the way. He was studying in Italy at one stage. Just I know.
I love that.
Yeah.
If you look at, by the way, and Rob, this is interesting because I'm seeing the same things you are here, right, in America that you're seeing there in New Zealand. So there's a new, and I think if you look it up on TikTok, and I don't know the hashtag, the new wealthy, and the phrase, my daughter was telling me about this, my 18-year-old daughter. So it's the experience. So the new wealthy, the and it's not Gen Z. What's the generation, whatever it is, the generation that's in college and just post college, right? It's called, maybe it is Gen Z.
I think it is Gen Z. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So the new wealthy, the Gen Z new wealth is experience. They're not buying houses. They're not buying cars.
So that's
They
so
are,
fascinating, isn't it? So
yep.
I've got this ability to start living a trend, and I never realized it was a trend until like 5 years later when everyone wakes up and starts copying me. But I never realized, I just think I'm doing something odd that nobody else does. And I did it like with getting rid of my expensive cars and getting a more adventurous sort of a car. I did that, I don't know, 30 years ago or more, and bought, like a 4-wheel drive. And then I did the same thing with a motorbike. I got a motorbike you can go exploring backcountry roads with. But I did it with a whole bunch of other things. And I never actually ever realized that when I kind of gave everything away and then became a digital nomad, and we're living in India for 5 years. Most of the time we're living in France for a summer. We're traveling here and traveling there. And it was like, all our friends like, you don't own a house at the moment and the market's going up, like you must be crazy. And it's like, well, no, we're having this incredible time. We just, went traveling for 5 years before COVID, and explored India and went to see all of our family members in the UK, went to various business and retreat things in the States, and went to Spain and Italy, and summer in France, blah blah. So in other words, it's kind of like that whole thing of, we were just living the experience, and that is like probably the richest phase of my life. Interesting you say that. So the Gen Z new wealth is experience. Yeah, that's a very high vibration stance too.
And so for me, and that's always fascinated me, that story that you tell me, that part of your life, like that, when you start talking about spiritual coaches, like that's what you can share with people. People are looking to live the life you just lived, and it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with experience. Like I attached money to it. It has nothing to do with money. Everybody wants to hear about your experience. They don't want to hear about your money. That's where I was hung up. I was hung up on this thing that I needed to have money to have people want to hear my experiences. But no, my daughter is telling me that everybody is just, it's all like, they don't care. They're not buying, like they're wearing shorts, flip-flops, and a tank top, and they're going to Italy for a month. And it's not, it's just like, how do we do this? How do we live this life? How do we have this experience? And they're just posting pictures all over. I'm in Turkey, I'm in Trinidad, I'm in the Netherlands. Obviously now, because of COVID, everything's been sort of just, but it is, for me, COVID gave us a pause for people like you and for people like me to catch up, right? So it doesn't pass us by. It really, it's because, and Gary said this, by the way, and this is where you and I really believe we can be, where we can be. Joshua said this, and I think it was either the last podcast, because I've been listening to the 349 through 355 are the most powerful podcasts that I've listened to them each 5 or 6 times. 349 to 355.
And the Joshua Live, it is incredible. Like the things that they are saying to people, including what they said to Jackie, which was mind blowing.
I know. I wanted that. That's what I was actually.
I know.
I think I sent Jackie an email saying I'm jealous.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I can see that because she's a successful actor and singer, she has that innate quality, that you might call star quality. She has that innate ability to be super relatable, that people watch her and listen to her and they like her and they want more of it. Like you can't really succeed as a performer, I don't think, without that quality. So in other words, she has a kind of a big head start on people like me, for example, or you maybe, I don't know, but she actually has that quality where people want to hear what she has to say. And, that's that kind of charisma or magnetism that, that for want of a better term, you might say star quality. So for someone like her, who's actually spiritually very advanced and knowledgeable, and she's also super, super bright. Like she did a podcast with her brother, who's a Mensa kind of a, like brilliant mind. But I mean, she's, in my opinion, she's got an extraordinary brain. Like she's very, very clever, very quick. Things you ask her to do something, like on a website or, write something or whatever, and you blink and it's done and it's really good. And it's like, anyway, so the point is that she has this whole other thing to reach people in a way that most other people can't, And what I'm saying is the thing that people like about her as a performer, as an actress and a singer, that's really, you can see that if she's also got a spiritual message, then she's going to get reach that most people couldn't even begin to imagine.
So that's such a perfect lead in. So Gary, and I don't know which episode, you may remember this, where he goes, and there isn't anybody out there for you, meaning all of us, to be a mentor for us. Like we are on this journey trying to understand and experience this self-discovery journey. There isn't a mentor out there for us. There isn't no Tony Robbins for what we're doing.
No,
there isn't.
No.
So what you're doing, it just sort of, I feel it, is this COVID pause gives an opportunity for you, right? For people like myself, for Jackie, right? Who is, obviously 10 steps ahead, but to catch up and be like, okay, well, we can be those mentors. We can be that mentor for that upcoming group to go, yeah, you're right. We've had all the trappings. Like we did it all. So for me, and my wife said this to me yesterday, I was on a call, and I've, my entire life, people have said this to me, whoa, you got to quiet down. You got to quiet down. You can't be so passionate. Like, no, people, if you're quieter, people will accept you more. So if you talk like this and you're like, wow, that was a really good idea. That's just not me. It's never been me. I have literally banged my head against a wall my entire life, trying to self-edit myself to fit into a mold that I was never meant to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the classic square peg in a round hole, right? So what you now realize is, why don't I find something to do where my expressiveness and volume is an asset and will be appreciated? So in other words,
that's what Jackie does, but that's what I feel like Jackie's a mentor for me for that, because she, on her podcast, I mean, she cuts people off. She's in a very loving and caring way. Of course, I don't mean to be, she's not rude, but she's so aggressive in that positivity way, right? Well, tell me what you were thinking.
Yeah. Well, she's got so much energy flowing through her, right? Like she's got massive energy flowing through her. And, she, and it comes out in the podcast, right? And you can feel it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that to me is something for us. And I had this idea for a very long time. And maybe that's almost like the name of this, even though it's a law of attraction. It's called a mentor mashup. And Jay Shetty, and I don't know if you know who he is, but you'd enjoy his book. He was a monk for 5 years, literally lived in India as a monk. He's a British-born citizen, wrote a book called How to Live Like a Monk. And for, I think it's 5 years, maybe 8, whatever it is, lived literally meditating 8 hours a day. And he has this concept. And then he became the #1 content creator of spirituality elements on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever, and Forbes voted him something, whatever, the number of something under 30, whatever it may be. But he has this concept called, we all, in the past, we've wanted to be, if we wanted to have a mentor, and I know we're running a little late. You have to go, Rob? Sorry if
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. So I'm just writing these things down as you're talking.
Right. So he has this idea, which is, and I wrote it down that, and I literally, this was the spark 4 years ago, 3 years ago on one of his podcasts for me, where I joined his group called the Shetty Geniuses. And he said, we're used to, or in normal traditional society, we would ask someone, hey, would you mind being my mentor? Yep. Well, that was before the internet, before social media.
Yeah.
He's like, and the reason why you would ask someone to be their mentor is that you could understand how they were thinking. You could see them, you could hear them in classes, you could be there, so you could learn a little. But there's so much information now out there about an individual. You don't have to have one mentor. You don't have to ask anybody to be a mentor. You can then just pick a person, pick a few people, and you can find more information about that person in one afternoon on the internet than any human being could have found 25 years ago, spending 10 years with that person. He's like,
so it's interesting you say that, because yesterday, I do this voluntary job, like a charity thing. We have this community-owned hospital and health center in our little village, and it's got massive grounds. So I mow the lawns because I like mowing lawns, and it keeps me really fit because it's quite steep. And so, and I take my time doing it, and I got these noise, these hearing protection earmuffs, right? But they're Bluetooth. So I have my phone in my pocket and I listen to podcast while I'm doing this work. Anyway, so the thought came to me. I thought about courses I've done in the past, like I did a year-long paid mentorship thing. It was, $1,000, $1,500 a month or something. And I had various retreats, 4 retreats in LA. This is all pre-COVID that I went to as well. And I was thinking, would I enroll in a program like that again? And the answer that came to me was pretty much what you just said as well. There is so much available. If I look at somebody on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and on their website and Google stuff, and I'm good at receiving information and processing it and packaging it up into actionable chunks. Like I can see that on these courses I did that, whereas nobody else really did. And I actually managed to repackage and resell a whole lot of that information. And I would give that information to people who'd done those courses with me. And you could see that they thought it was new information that I'd come up with. And it's like, no, so-and-so taught us this. I just wrote it down. I keep it all on Evernote and slice and dice it. But anyway, I think you're right that you can get so much information by even just listening to some of the TikTok marketing experts on TikTok, for example. Like I was doing that, I've just learned so much from. And so the idea, and I was also thinking about our daughter-in-law who had a corporate mentor, a woman who's maybe 20 years older than her, quite a senior executive, going back maybe 6 or 7 years. But I've never heard her mention that mentor in the last 5 years. And next time I see her, I must ask her. It's funny you should mention that, because I was thinking about this just the other day. Like, I wonder if she's moved past that, because I thought about that model and I thought that feels really old school.
Yeah, maybe what you and I can actually do is, and I had this concept and this phrase, mentor mashup, right? Where it's like, music, where they put the greatest songs together, they do this sort of music mashup, right?
Yep.
Where we take the mentors that we really, really believe have an idea or a concept, right? And you take 5 of those. So if you take Abraham Hicks, you take Tony Robbins, you take Abraham Hicks, you take Dr. Joe Dispenza, you take Joshua, you take Gary, you take Jackie, you put them all together. And there's a string, right, that allows people, you can't start with Joshua on 355.
No.
355. Right. Where do you start? Like, that's
too
the whole
advanced.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm trying to do with that LOA info portal, is to give people places to arrive at that are relevant for where they are at this time. We should mention that Jackie is Jackie Seiden, Seiden. She has a website in that name, JACKIE. And I think her podcast is called The Evolution Pod Club.
It is the evolution. Yeah. It's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. Definitely worth checking out. Yeah.
But it's so funny you said. So when I was talking about, how would I would start with the kids, right? When I was talking to them, I was like, okay, I can't start with this LOA thing that you sent me from Joshua, right? Which is beautiful and amazing. But how do I start with it? It does start with, what do you want out of life? And it starts to let them, to show them a mirror, right? And everybody says, I want money, I want wealth, and I'm like, okay, all right.
Does it start with page 1 of boot camp, or is that not where you want to start?
I know I wasn't ready on page 1 of boot camp. I wasn't ready for Joshua for 4 or 5 years. It took me 4 years or 5 years to get to Joshua. It started with Tom Bilyeu and Tony Robbins. You got to take action every single day. You got to make 100 phone calls to get one person to call you back, right? It starts with this. It started with me and I don't know if this is right, for me to start to ask myself questions, right? Before just following outside conditions. So the first question I ask him, what do I want in life? And Tony Robbins will tell you, and then once again, I'm not disparaging, I love Tony Robbins. Tom Bilyeu, you want to be successful, you want to have millions, you want to fly in a private jet like me, right? All these guys have all these different things. What Tom Bilyeu showed me was he had a different person. If you ever get a chance to go look at if you ever listen to podcast, it's called The Impact Theory. Go back and listen to the first one. He's got a few hundred now, but I listened to the very first, started listening to him right after he started. He has different people on every day. He is literally, the Impact Theory is mentor mashup. It's an author, it's a podcaster, it's somebody with a great approach or an idea, and he interviews them. And he is a brilliant interviewer, beyond brilliant. He's one of the smartest people. He asks unbelievably great questions that get to the earth of it. And and in a half hour, you're like, wow. Every author that's ever been on a show, I've downloaded the book and read it. Like, he's that good, Tom Bilyeu. He's, by the way, self-made billionaire. It is what it is. But that's where I started, and everything was attached to money. Everything I was started with was attached to money. It's getting to the point where you're willing to detach money from success. That's what Joshua was for me. He started slowly,
and it doesn't necessarily mean you won't have the money, but it's like, what is your measure? Yeah.
No, one is not dependent upon the other.
Yeah.
Right. You're right. You're right. I mean, Gary's he's very wealthy, doing very, very well. We're all doing very, very well. I'm very happy with the amount of money I have, and, whatever. But, for me, when I started it, I couldn't have stepped into the spiritual side of it. I was still hooey fooey. I didn't believe in, I was agnostic. I didn't believe in God. I'm like, I'm done with this. When I was doing Tony Robbins, I'm like, I can control my environment. I'm going to have to step on people. I'm going to have to, make this stuff happen. I was there. Right. So going from there to where we are in Joshua, that to me is that bridge, right? You gotta, how do you string them along to go, oh, wow, okay, that's super interesting. And I think it's through some stories, some experiences, right? You get them starting to go, okay, interesting. All right, I can buy into that for the moment, right? But if you take them into, even the first boot camp for me, I was at such a point, like it blew up my mind. Like I was like, holy cow.
Well, I just read the beginning of the first part of the first boot camp, like day one of week one, and it actually is already too advanced for an introductory thing. Like you need to have traveled this path somewhat already to absorb that. Hey, what was your TikTok handle again?
Sure, Jerry Kidd, JERRY KID, and it's got a picture of me when I was like 6, holding up like the $6 million man. I'm not kidding you.
Okay, because I just had a look.
There's Jerry Kidd. Let me see here. I'll pull it up.
There's Jerry Kidd 06. That's not you, is it?
No. It would be
there's
just
Jerry Kidd with a cartoon.
No, Jerry Kidd with a little kid holding up I'll tell you exactly what my TikTok.
Is there a space or anything between Jerry and Kidd?
I will tell you right now, as I pull this up. But I've started recently to go onto TikTok. Now it's funny, so they will tell you that people. All right. Let me see a profile. So it's at Jerry Kidd 2 Ds, KIDD.
Right. I saw there was some with 2 Ds. Jerry Kidd.
No caps, all just Jerry Kidd.
Okay, I could have that. There's a kid on there anyway.
Yep, that's me. That's the one with the kid. That's me. That's me when I was 6.
Is there an ice hockey?
There is an ice hockey. That's my friend's.
Lacrosse.
Yeah.
Is it hockey or lacrosse?
No, that's an ice hockey. My friend's my friend who I grew up with, his kid was here in Arizona playing in a tournament, and he's like being recruited as one of the top players. So I took a video of him skating, and it's great. Like TikTok, you're able to drop some music and have some fun. Like I have fun creating TikToks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I can see that, and I can see it's going to really bring out a whole new creative side for me.
Yeah,
with all of that. So I followed you anyway. So
that is where we can. I think, Rob, that's really what we can. So how do we get people from? Because you and I have done so much of that, right? And where we are with Gary and where we are with Joshua, like that was what I was worried about when talking with the kids. And what downloaded me last night, what downloaded me today, what I got was you're gonna ask the question, like, how, about happiness. What is it about that? You're gonna start this you gotta bring them along, and then go boom, here it is. And it all along the way, because right now manifestation, everybody is like, oh, I want to manifest, I want to manifestate $1 million, right? All these trends going on right now are diluting not diluting anything about them, but diluting what the real message of alignment is, right? Because everybody's looking to Tony Robbins calls them thing goals, right? He calls them thingles, right? Everybody wants to manifest a thing, more money, a relationship, or whatever. And I'm like, you can manifest that. They don't understand that if you're in the wrong mindset, or you're in fear, or you're in struggle and effort, whatever you manifest is going to continue that struggle and effort or that fear.
You either end up experiencing more of the lack of the thing or the fear you have, or you may even struggle and get the thing, but you didn't find it was satisfying in any way and you need more of something else. So I'm going to send you an episode from Social Media Marketing, the Social Media Examiner podcast with a woman called Tamsin Webster, and it's about the impact of your message. And I think it'll help you a lot putting your talk together. She's coached a number of TED Talk people. So she's a communications expert. Becoming Irresistible, how to maximize, it's just scrolling across. Becoming Irresistible, how to maximize the impact of your message. So I'm going to send you that episode. I was listening to it, mowing the lawns.
I love it. There's a guy
it's
you
like, shall
too.
I listen to it, shan't I? And then it's like, oh, I'm so glad I took the inspiration and did that. Yeah.
So there's a guy you might want to look up. His name is Pete Vargas III. So it's Pete.
How do you spell his surname?
Vargas, Varges, Vargas. And it's like third, Pete Vargas III.
Yep.
I took a course with him, a 12-week, I think it was an 8-week or 12-week course with him about building your personal brand and your stories.
Yep.
So he's all about, interesting, which you'll like, he's all about how to tell a story.
Right. Yeah. Well, storytelling is such a critical part of it. And I guess that's probably, so I'll send you this podcast. Hopefully it's the right episode. Right.
Well, I'll look it up if it's not. Great. That's great.
Okay.
No, this was great. Thank you so much. Like I said, this is, I'm still going through the episode, and I'm still going through downloading some of the stuff that
yes, it is huge. We'll probably come back to it next week as well.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for everything, Rob.
It's always good to talk to you.
You got it, my
See
friend.
you, Bye.
Bye-bye.